Okay, everybody. We are starting chapter 1, and chapter 1 is about linear equations. So, generally speaking, a linear equation has this form: y equals mx plus b. And the reason we call it linear is because if you graph it, it will produce a straight line. That's why we call it linear. Another thing about linear equation is that the degree of the equation is a 1. If it's greater than 1, then we call it other things that we will get to later on. Okay, so linear equations. Now we want to do some solving of linear equations and so forth. So we're going to cover about, 4 sections of chapter 1, and we are starting with section 1. And I'm just going to do several examples from each section. So these are problems from page 82 of your textbook. So the first problem I would like to do is number 8. And number 8 is like this: 2a plus 4 times a minus 1. And that's your equation. And we would like to solve this equation for a. A is our variable. So the first thing to do is simplify both sides if possible. So let's look at the left side. I can't do anything in the parentheses, but I can distribute the 4 inside because 4 is being multiplied. So you have 2a plus 4a minus 4 equals to 3. Now there is a negative 1 here, which we can distribute. So we get negative 2a minus 1. Now remember that I cannot subtract the 3 and the 1 because the 1 is being multiplied by the parentheses. And because of order of operations, multiplication comes first before addition or subtraction. Okay. So now let's go back to the left side. Can we combine anything? Do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. 2a and 4a, that's 6a minus 4 equals negative 2a. There are no terms with a, but then we have 3 minus 1, which is a 2. All right, now that we have variables on both sides, obviously we want to move them all to one side. So you don't always have to move it to the left side of the equal sign. You can also move it to the right side, but it's customary, or usually we move it to the left, but that's okay. So I am going to do the opposite of negative 2a, which is adding 2a to both sides. Now I'm going to do it all in one shot. That means one step. Since I'm moving all the variables to the left, I'm moving all the constants to the right. So since I have a negative 4, I'm going to do the opposite, plus 4. So these guys cancel, and I have 8a equals to 6. And I have multiplication here, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8 to get a by itself. And a equals to 6 over 8, but 6 over 8 is reducible. Numbers top and bottom are both divisible by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is a 3. 8 divided by 2 is a 4. So here's your solution to the equation for problem number 8, 3/4. Okay, next I want to do number 15. So number 15, right here, is as follows. You have x plus 3 over 5 plus x over 3 equals to 7. Again, this is from section 1-1, starting with page 82. This problem is on page 83. So there are two ways of approaching this problem. You can combine the two fractions on the left and then cross multiply, or you can get rid of all the fractions in one shot. Okay, so let's try the second way. because usually people don't like fractions. So what's, now 7 has a denominator of 1. What is the LCD, lowest common denominator, between 5, 3, and 1? It will be 15. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by the number 15, which is the LCD. Okay, so I'm going to distribute. So imagine you just have this fraction times 15 over 1. What happens? 5 goes into 15 3 times, and you just get 1s in the denominator. So we get 3 times x plus 3. That's for the first fraction. Second fraction, 15 times the second fraction. So 3 goes into 15 5 times, so plus 5x equals to 7 times 15. I'm going to be lazy, and I'm going to go get my calculator. I'll be right back. I forgot to bring my calculator the first time. So what is 7 times 15? 7 times 15 is 105. So I get 105 on the right side. So you see, in one step, you get rid of all the fractions, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so that's one way of doing the problem. Again, now we simplify, so we distribute. You get 3x plus 9 plus 5x equals 105. Combine like terms. 8x plus 9 equals 105. Subtract 9 from both sides. So these 9s cancel out, and you get 96 on the right side and an 8x. So then we divide by 8. Is 96 divisible by 8? Yes. X turns out to be 12. So there you go. That's the solution to this linear equation for problem number 15. Now let's try problem number 37. 37 is a formula. So in number 37, we have a formula which is the volume of, I'm not quite sure what's the volume, but it's a geometric formula. It's a volume of a shape or a figure or a three-dimensional object. So that's the volume formula, and it's saying solve for L. Solve for L. Okay, so we treat these quantities just like regular numbers. So the first thing you want to get rid of everything that is attached to L, so you can get L by itself. So we want to get rid of 1/4. So 1 is being divided by 4. What's opposite of division? Multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So the 4's cancel out. So you get 4v equals to pi d squared L. And then everything is being multiplied here. So what's opposite of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide by everything that doesn't have an L in it. That is pi d squared. So pi cancels pi, d squared cancels. So we get L equals to 4v over pi d squared. And that's all I can do, because I don't know what v or d stands for, or what are the values. So therefore I just leave it as it is. So there you go. The last problem I would like to tackle is number 55. Now number 55 is a word problem. There we go. Let's see, what is the word problem. I'm gonna put it right here if you guys can see it. Let's see. Well, I'm just gonna read it. I'm sure everybody has access to number 55. Sorry, the logistic of putting a book under the camera is a little hard. It says, in a forensic, this is on page 84, in a forensic studies, skeletal remains are analyzed to determine the height, gender, race, age, and other characteristics of a descendant. For instance, the height of a male individual is approximated as 34 inches more than 3 1/3 times the length of the radial bone. Okay, so let me stop right there. So this is problem number 55. So it says the height of a male individual is approximated. So the height is, or so we're translating English into mathematics. The height of a male individual is equal sign is 34 inches more is plus, than 3 1/3 times the length of the radial bone. Let's call it L for the length of the radial bone. So there's our equation. 34 inches more than 3 1/3 times the length of the radial bone. If a live individual is 74 inches tall, how long is the radial bone? So if you have a male individual who's 74 inches in height, what's the measure of the radial bone? So what do? I just plug the 74 in place, and I'm going to rewrite the equation. Now this is a mixed number. I'm going to change it into an improper fraction. So 3 times 3 is 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get rid of the 34. So it's a positive 34. We do the opposite. That's negative 34 from both sides. And that's 0, and that gives me 40, 10/3. Now how do I get rid of the 10/3? I multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction. So that way 3 and 3 cancels out, 10 and 10 cancels out, you just get 1L equals 10 goes into 40. How many times? 4 times. And then you multiply 4 by 3. That gives you 12 inches. And as I mentioned on Tuesday, don't forget your units in word problems, if there is any. So the length of the radial bone for this specific individual is 12 inches. I'm going to stop right here, and we're going to continue in the next video.